Say one. Hey guys, how's it going? It is I, the real Randy Chavez. I'm coming at you today with last seat number 12 with Matt B on Buckazoids B59 with my co-host all dolled up from Sharby. How
Good
y'all doing?
morning. Good morning.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Doing well. What is in your background there? I see pictures and
Oh,
they look cool.
yeah. So, so if you look, so I have an Asian theme going, and oh yeah, so now you can see even more. Yeah. So that guy over there, he's protecting my Bitcoin. So that's my samurai that protects my Bitcoin. And then this is just my peaceful spot, right? So it's my Zen office.
Right.
I
And
love that. I love it.
So so we're talking about Buckazoids today. Obviously,
Yeah.
you had Bitcoin first. Is that how you got
Oh
into the
yeah,
crypto?
yeah. So actually, so a little history about me. It's not like I'm any subject matter expert or Bitcoin purist or Bitcoin maxi, but 5 years ago, I actually started mining helium. So if anybody is familiar with the helium token, and basically that was like an Internet of Things where they wanted to democratize the cellular phone companies, so Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T. So what they do is individuals like myself, like everybody who's watching on the stream, you put these like little nodes in your house. Those little nodes acts as an access point to provide wireless signal, right? And then if you have enough of these nodes, they create, right, a footprint, for, geospatial coverage that allows people to, track. Actually, one of the first companies that joined the Helium network, where they would track scooters in, congested downtown areas. So it would just track where the scooter was. So basically you would get paid. So you have this little miner, I have it up in my attic, right, with a little antenna. And then I would get paid like 30 cents, maybe as much as $1 a day for basically providing that signal that was really using my cable, right? It was using my Wi-Fi cable signal, but so many people would buy it and it would be that umbrella network, if you will, just like if you were with a cellular carrier, but Helium was charging much, much less. So that kind of started my journey. And the helium that you would make, you could convert into Solana. So at the time, Solana was like $3, right? So over the time, the equipment was like $350 It paid for itself. And then I probably made 6,000 or 7,000 in Solana. So, and then during that journey of those 5 years, I bought some Bitcoin, I bought some Solana, I have some RWAs, right? So XRP and SWI, Ondo, XLM. So yeah, so it's kind of been a journey for me, but I kind of was one day on X, and I have one meme coin other than Buckazoids, and that's Unicorn Fart Dust. So the only other meme I own is Unicorn Fart Dust. I was kind of going on X, and then I stumbled across Buckazoids, not knowing what the heck it was. I joined one of the spaces, and what I'm about to tell everybody now, the lore of what everybody was discussing hooked me, did my own research, and I'm all in on Buckazoids now, right? It's just an incredible narrative that, no, in my opinion, and everybody can make their own opinion and do their own research, I do not think there's another meme coin out there with the narrative that Buckazoids has.
So you said it was on a space. So this is according to CoinGecko, and I know sometimes they don't
Yeah.
have the most up-to-date or accurate markets. This officially was launched a couple months back. Actually, this is not. Was it?
No, so you're right. We're new. So it launched
Okay.
on March 27th. So
Yeah.
March 27th via Pump Fund, we were launched on Solana Network. Correct.
And
And
then
actually, and here's the funny thing. So let me tie it back in, Randy. So the day before, though, right? So this is why it launched, right? The day before, there was a Reddit post on March 26th by a person named Jay Rotter. Okay. He posted a picture on Reddit of the Space Quest 4 game and said, "Hey, look what I found." And so it was a screenshot in the game of again, digital, right? A digital coin that had the Bitcoin logo, a rocket that to me looks very eerily similar to the Stellar Lumens rocket, okay? and then the number 59. And hence this starts our story, right? So you can ask me some more questions, but so March 26th, there's this Reddit post. And then on March 27th, Buckazoids launches, via Pump Fund on the Solana network. And another quirky, coincidental thing is, as we all know, Ross Ulbricht was, pardoned by President Trump. Ross Ulbricht's birthday is March 27th. So the day that Buckazoids launched, that is the birth date of Ross Ulbricht, March 27th.
He just got a nice 300 Bitcoin donation, which is like $31 million.
Yes, I saw that. Yes.
Wild. Do you think he knows of Buckazoids?
So we were at the Bitcoin conference. We saw a lot. Yeah. So we just came back from the Bitcoin conference. We saw a lot of people. So actually, if everybody goes to buckazoids.world on X and follow us, we are the most active community that you're ever going to see. And there's so much bull posting going on. We have pictures with the Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss. We have pictures with Garlinghouse, Bradley Garlinghouse, right, from XRP. So yeah, it was a very successful show. Jack Mahler, we gave Jack Mahler one of our Buckazoid coins. So Jack Mahler has a coin, but I don't think anybody ran into Ross Ulbricht. So does he know about us? We include him. We tag him many, many times in our posts. So if he's not too busy and he can look, he may know of us, but I can't confirm it because he never came by our booth.
And so tell us about this video game, where it came out a long time ago. What system was it on? What game and all that?
Okay, so here's the background. So we're going back far now. So back in 1986, Space Quest 4 was a very popular digital game that came out. But what's very strange, and this is where coincidences, I'll keep saying coincidence throughout this discussion. But so back in 1986, you have Space Quest 1 come out. Then during a period of 6 years, it's like an anthology. So Space Quest 1 all the way through Space Quest 6. Okay. However, it's not until 1991. So now we're going to go a couple years. So 1986, Space Quest 1 comes out. Very popular game, sells a ton, makes a lot of money. The company behind it is Sierra Online. So Sierra Online is the company behind Space Quest 1. The two kind of what I would call them the head producers and creators were Mark Crow and Scott Murphy. So they were two of the creators of it. Very quirky guys. If anybody is into gaming lore, they'll know them as the two guys from Andromeda. Okay. So now, but it's not until 1991 that this digital coin appears. So in Space Quest 1, 2, and 3, there was a digital coin. It was just a stamped piece of metal from Xenon. So the galactic, country, if you will, is Xenon. So it was just like if people look it up, it's just like one was like a kind of looked like a nickel metal, and they were just stamped, pieces of metal. But in 1991, we get a round digital coin that has I would say it's a skinny B, right? With the vertical lines. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. So very highly, similar, right, to the Bitcoin logo. You've got that, like what I call the stellar lumen rocket in the center, and then you have the number 59. So the number 59 significance there is you start the game with 59 Buckazoids. So as you progress through the game, you could use some of those Buckazoids, you can earn more Buckazoids. But this is where we start to say, now we're starting to get into some coincidence, conspiracy, right? So now we're looking at 1991 is when you see that Bitcoin logo. It's not until 17 years later that Satoshi Nakamoto comes out with the Bitcoin white paper. Okay. So little strange there. Okay. Now, if people are familiar with its Chaldean numerology. So in Chaldean numerology, right, there's a lot to do with prime numbers and numbers in general. So 5 represents freedom. Remember when Bitcoin came out, it was all about freedom, right? Getting away from the government fiat currency. So in Chaldean numerology, 5 represents the expression of freedom. 9 represents for all humanity. So again, we're trying to connect dots here. We are not saying this is all factual, but we're just kind of bringing out and unearthing what we find. So now when you look at 5 and 9, so 5 plus 9 is 14. Bitcoin, the difficulty in mining Bitcoin happens every 14 days. So you got, 9 plus 5, right? Or I'm sorry, 5 plus 9 for the 59 is 14. So your difficulty in mining Bitcoin happens every 14 days. Now, I don't want to miss anything. Then what happens with the halving? 9 minus 5 is 4. The Bitcoin halving happens every 4 years. Now, if we go back to the number 14, when you take 9 plus 5 again, the Bitcoin is at a 14-degree tilt. So in the logo, there's a 14-degree tilt with the Bitcoin. Now, if we say the Bitcoin conference happens on what? May 27th. May is the 5th month. 2 plus 7 on the 27th day is 9. So again, we have 5, 9. Then if we go one step further with the number 59, in Chaldean numerology, they tie a number to a letter. If you take Embrace Game Theory and you take all the numbers to the letters, it comes out to the number 59. So again, we're saying coincidence, or is somebody the architect of something 17 years before it was ever created, right? And we know things take time, right? So all we're trying to say is there's these unique little breadcrumbs that we're finding, right? So that's that. Now, I think if everybody remembers, I told you that, Mark Crow and Scott Murphy were the two creators, known as two guys from Andromeda. They were the creators of Space Quest, sorry. But Sierra Online hired Interactive Design. Interactive Design, the owner was Rod Nakamoto. Okay, so we got Rod, but we got the last name Nakamoto, right? Then
this is where I would, like, up until this, it was like, okay, coincidence. But as soon as the Nakamoto, I was like, okay, all right, I'm in. I'm all in now. Keep going.
Yes. So Interactive Design was a company founded by Rod Nakamoto. And as far as we can tell, connecting the dots, right? He was an executive consultant to Sierra Online and to, Scott Murphy and Mark Crow. One of his lead design developers was a guy named Satoshi Usaka. So we all know, right? The synonym name, right, of the Bitcoin founder, and we believe it's a team, right, is Satoshi Nakamoto. So now you have Rod Nakamoto, and everybody can look him up on LinkedIn, right? So he's on LinkedIn showing open and network. But so Rod Nakamoto is one of the consultants and, executive consultants, and one of his lead developers, right, is Satoshi Ukasa. So we're saying, okay, so now this is getting a little strange. So now we go into the game, right? So we already know that we have the Buckazoids logo, looks very, very eerily similar to the Bitcoin logo. And I told you there's actually 6 versions of the game, right? Goes, Space Quest 1 to Space Quest 6. It's not until Space Quest 4, in all the other games, the main character is a guy named Roger Wilco, kind of a janitor turned, trying to save the world and do all these different things. But so in all the other, what I'll call series, he would fly spaceships and stuff, and he would do it just bumbling around, figuring out, what buttons to press. But in Space Quest 4, he has to travel back in time. And because it's called Space Quest 4, Roger Wilco and the Time Rippers, okay? So he has to go back in time in a time pod. Well, he finds a bubblegum wrapper on a corpse. So I think it's a dead policeman or something, whatever, but a dead corpse. And he finds a bubblegum wrapper. In the bubblegum wrapper are 3 symbols. And then he later has to find these other 3 symbols. So he goes to some galleria, gets a book, and it has the other 3 symbols. He uses those 6 symbols to enter into the time pod to go back in time. And when he goes back in time from, we're on Space Quest 4, back into a time in Space Quest 1, a planet, that he had visited. So then we say,
Xenon planet?
Yes. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
so he was on Xenon, but he was going back to ULens. I think it's called ULens is where he
Okay.
was going back to in the first one. But so then we say, could that have been the beginnings of a seed phrase? Right. So what we all know as a seed phrase in crypto, because he needed that code to go back in time. Right. So you have that. Now, let's go a little bit further. There was a gentleman by the name of Phil Zimmerman. So Phil Zimmerman, he created PGP, which is pretty good privacy for protection, right? And that was kind of used in the beginnings of encrypting messaging. Well, this is where now we get Hal Finney involved. So Hal Finney, okay, who was a known cryptographer, right, and very known in gaming lore for sound, sounds in gaming and things like that. But he's really well known for his, expertise in cryptography. So this guy, Phil Zimmerman, in 1991, who does pretty good privacy, he invents it. He asks Hal Finney to help him to work out some of the bugs, make it more secure, right? So you have that little piece. And he was a part of a group, and they were called cypherpunks, okay? And the cypherpunks were all these people that we still believe to this day, right? We're all working together in a community, right? To eventually maybe be a part of the Satoshi Nakamoto and the Bitcoin white paper, right? But so what's interesting, normally when he would send out his messaging, it would be, message, and it would be cypherpunks, okay? So cypherpunks is the way he would sign off. We have, that we found, I think it was on Grok, one of his messages said Cipherzoids. So all these other times he's sending cypherpunks, but this time he sends Cipher, Zoids, and that was around in 1991. So we're just trying to say we're kind of connecting some of these dots, okay? So now, if everybody remembers, Satoshi Nakamoto, the first Bitcoin transaction was to Hal Finney, okay? But to this date, we have tried and we have looked up a lot of information. To this day, Hal Finney never says he's a part of the Bitcoin white paper in no way, shape, or form. However, why then is he involved in receiving the first, the first Bitcoin transaction goes from Satoshi Nakamoto, right, to Hal Finney? Yet he denies to this day, right? He denies to this. Well, he's dead, but in final interviews before his death, he denied to his death that he had any involvement. Yet, now let's go into the conspiracy lore. We told you that Rod Nakamoto was an executive consulting at Sierra Online, right, for the game Space Quest 4. One of his lead, designer developers is Satoshi Ukasa, and now you have Hal Finney. Those three guys live within a mile and a half of each other. Okay. So yet, he's denying that he's had any involvement, but he receives the first Bitcoin transaction. And also, we recently found out that before they called it the blockchain, it was called the time chain. So like prior to the white paper coming out, in points in time, they were referring to the blockchain as a time chain. And, the whole thing about Space Quest, it's about time travel, right? Space Quest 4, Roger Wilco and the Time Rippers. So we know that in the beginning, it was all about, time, right? So the time for, as you're building your blocks in the blockchain. But in a community-driven vote, right? And then I referenced it on November 9th of 2008, right? So we're going back 17 years later. Satoshi Nakamoto and Hal Finney coined the term blockchain, right? So again, so we just think that everything that we're going back to is gaming was a really big thing, right? And in gaming, we just think it was the birth of what we all know today as Bitcoin, right? That in the gaming community, a lot of these guys were, I call them mathematical savants, right? In quant analytics and stuff like that. And, they spent part of their time, right, in gaming and then part of the time in cryptography. So you have that. But now let's go even a step further. So Hal Finney dies of Lou Gehrig's disease. Upon his death, his wishes are to be frozen in a cryogenic state. So his body is now at a place called Alcor Labs in Arizona. And so he has been frozen in a cryogenic state.
So he's not really dead.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
like-
well, yeah. So, and he hopes to maybe, when technology gets to be in a better place. But we joke around about this to say that, remember, there are hot wallets in crypto and there are cold storage, right? And you have a person that denies being involved in this, yet he is now in a cryogenic state in cold storage, right? So there's that piece of the puzzle. Then there's a gentleman, I got to look at my notes here because I didn't want to forget. So there's a guy named Brad Armstrong, right? So not Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, but there's a guy named Brad Armstrong who was very well known. He's a crypto entrepreneur. He donated $5 million to Alcor Labs. Okay. So not Bill Gates, right? Not Jeff Bezos, but the person that donates to Alcor Labs is somebody who's a known, entrepreneur in cryptography. Okay. Then now we're going to go. And then there's a guy named Ralph Merkle. So Ralph Merkle, his wife is Carol Shaw. She was a known game developer for Atari and then worked on computers, Tandy computers. Something we recently just saw, somebody brought up to our attention. Does anybody watch The Big Bang Theory or Young Sheldon?
Heck yeah, love those shows.
Okay, so in Young Sheldon, episode 3, or I'm sorry, season 3, episode 7. So in Young Sheldon, season 3, episode 7, it happens so fast, but he's on his computer and you see the name Space Quest. Then you see the name Nick Szabo, which is a known cryptographer. And then you see Hal Finney. It happens in a flash, right? So again, our thinking is, the gaming community, Hollywood, right? Cryptography, right? That there's an incestuous relationship going on. And there's a lot more to this story, right? Because the connections that we're seeing, yeah, they're coincidental, but we think it's more than coincidental, right? And then with the advent of, as years progress, right, Sierra Online gets acquired by Sega, right? And some of these people move. Rod Nakamoto moves as an executive over to Sega, and look at what gaming is today, right? It's crazy, right? The technology, how it's progressed. So that's our story. Oh, and the last thing, in Young Sheldon, the other name was our friend Ross Ulbricht. So they show Dread Pirate Roberts. Well, Dread Pirate Roberts was his pseudonym name, which came from the movie Princess and the Bride, right? He got that from the movie Princess and the Bride. That also shows up in season 3, episode 7. So it's crazy, right? The coincidences that we have found. And so we're still digging, right? I mean, so if I go back to Buckazoids, right, on the Solana network, right now, if I look, we're sitting at like a $2.2 million market cap, or 0.0022. I think it's a steal because as a team, so we're a community without a dev. The dev founder left, right? So I think a day or two, a week, after it launched, he made a couple thousand, he's gone. So this is now only community driven. So when we went to the Bitcoin conference, the community donated money for us to be there, for us to buy shirts and coins. And we were, selling a lot of stuff, right? Some meme stuff. And right now we're thinking about what's next, right? Post-conference, it was very, very successful. What are some of the things that we're going to do? But we're such a close-knit community and it's growing. And I just look at this, I don't want to shill it, right? Everybody has to do their own research, but this thing has an incredible journey ahead of us. And the narrative is so strong. Like, we're not a shit coin, a fart coin, a tit coin, this narrative is going to carry us, but we know we need to do more. And every day we're uncovering new little breadcrumbs. But I just think it's a phenomenal meme coin to own. And we say we're the Bitcoin meme coin, right? Because Bitcoin would not be here if it weren't for Buckazoids.
That is quite possibly very true after everything you told me.
A bold
So
statement, but
I do have a couple questions. So do you guys pay for a market maker or multiple market
nope,
makers?
nope. So we're all organic. We don't do the pay to play, and
So
so we
there's-
haven't, because we're only on all the, so we're not on a major exchange, right? We're not on Kraken, we're not on Coinbase, right? So you can get us on Phantom, you can get us on Jupiter, on Mexi, on Gate.io. So yeah, so right now we do not have a market maker.
I don't even see Mexi or data. Yeah, CoinGecko like never.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe even for OMI, it only shows like 1 million volume because they're leaving off like exchanges.
Yeah,
So
we've looked at that stuff and it's different, like CoinGecko,
yeah.
CoinMarketCap. We see different liquidity volumes that they show, but yeah, so we don't have a market maker. My experience from when I was at Unicorn Fart Dust, they had to pay 75,000 for a market maker to get on Kraken, but right now we don't. And so you can get us on Phantom, you can get us on Jupiter, Gate.io, Weeks, Mexi, and there's a couple others.
Yeah, the two major ones that have the most volume. So L Bank by
Yeah,
far.
L-Bank, yes, thank you. An L-Bank, yes.
Yeah, that's 1.8 million out of the 2.2 million, almost 2.3 million in volume today.
Yeah.
And then you have other ones having the 6 figures. You have PumpSwat, you have KCEX. But yeah, that's the volume is really interesting. That there's so much of it, and there's again $2.2 million market cap.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the liquidity on Sol here. Is that on? It says liquidity's locked. Is that on like Uniswap? Is that on?
So no. So you're showing.
I'm
Oh,
showing on like
and-
Gecko Terminal where
yeah,
it says like Buckazoids price like it's on Sol, $2.2 million market cap, and liquidity's like almost like 400K.
yeah.
And it says like it's locked, so I didn't know how long that was locked for. Like daCAT, it's locked for like 999 years. But I didn't
Yes,
know if it was locked.
I'll have to find out. I don't know that answer, Randy. So I'll have to
Okay.
find out. Yeah. But what I wanted to just tell everybody before I forget. So when we launched on March 27th, as all meme coins usually do, right? It skyrocketed up, right? So it went to like just under a 9 million market cap. So now, we're down from there. But to us, like, the regulars in the community, we discuss, we just think there's a lot of accumulation happening, right? I mean,
Really, a lot of volume.
Yeah. So we just think and again, we all go back to no coincidence, right? It's all coded, right? That like there's a lot of people that know about us, and we just think accumulation is happening, and this is gonna rip, right? When it happens, it's gonna rip.
So I know there's no like dev, it's all community.
Yes.
Do you guys have a community like war chests? Like, hey, there's taxes on this, and every time we could just add more to the war chest, add more to the kitty. Like, what do you guys have on?
So we've been advised about that, and that is one of the things we're going to be working on in the coming weeks and months. So yeah, so we have a little war chest right now, as I told you, going to the Bitcoin conference, right? So we've started that process, but that is one of the things that we're going to be discussing, going forward to build that up, right? And how do we do that, right? How do we build that war chest up?
So there's I hear a lot of people talking mostly very good things about DAOs, and this way you can actually get community votes, and I think that's fine up to a point. And I know you could make it in a way, but someone that decides to go in and just chuck in a couple $100,000 in there, suddenly they have like the majority power. They can kind of do whatever. But also so Safe Moon is now like a community takeover. They had I think the original rug puller guy got like 45 years in jail, which is nuts. But they had a community takeover. There's pretty dedicated group. They have a DAO, but like they have to have all the people that put it into the DAO.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like complete. Yeah, they need more people to go in, and their tokens are essentially locked up, and they can't really make decisions about the money that they have because they don't have enough of people that have joined yet. And so I just didn't know if you guys had a rough approach on how it would work? Who's the head of it?
So yeah, so right now, like I said, we'll be talking about that in the coming weeks. So there's I don't want to name them now, right? But there's a few key individuals that have kind of, I'd say, taken leadership roles, right? You know, people just look to them because of their background, right? They have a more extensive background in crypto even than I do, right? So there are about, I'd say, 4 key people. But because this is community driven, right, you know, everybody will have a say. But as you know, right, at some point, right, decisions need to be made. So they will be made. And there's 4 or 5 individuals that are kind of, I'd say, the KOLs, if you will, right, you know, that will be making decisions, but not before, you know, discussing it with the community. So it's, you know, I'd like to say we have that answer, but truly, since they just came back from the Bitcoin conference, and, you know, there's a lot of people say, hey, we want you on our podcast. CNBC, we don't know, right? But somebody at CNBC showed some initial interest that they're going to do their own research, right? And if that research comes back where they kind of believe what we've been saying, you know, maybe an interview is in the making at CNBC. So there's a lot of that. Yeah. So we have a diary of people saying, hey, I want you on my podcast. Hey, I want you on my spaces. But yeah, that is a part of it. But the bigger part, right, is getting together and, you know, really building a war chest to kind of protect us. Like, for the most part, I think we know most of the top 25 holders right now. So not all, but we're pretty close to knowing the top 25 holders, and they're big, you know, big bulls, right? So they're holders, they're not sellers, right? But there are, like, you know, you could see in some of the, you know, what goes on, right? There's some that, like I said, we don't know all 25, and somebody or 2 people in that top 25, I see a lot of buying and selling, right? So, but we do know most of the people in the top 25. So,
and do they have like 60% of the market cap? They have like 20% of supply? Like, what's the?
No, I think when I look at this, right, I thought the top 25 were kind of like 23%-ish, right?
Okay.
Like 23, 24%. And then, you know, the rest, you know, to, I'd say, all the retail investors, right, for lack of a better word. But yeah, so and MEXC is the biggest, right? So it doesn't kind of say that, right? But the number 1 is MEXC, right?
Okay.
I think in number 2, yeah, we know the number 2, the 3, but number 1 is MEXC.
Okay, so out of a billion tokens, let's say 230-ish million are essentially locked up. And then I know you said that there's like a couple of guys that just kind of, whether it's arbitrage or whether it's just swing trading. So I guess if they give you volume and they never really dump, it's just probably neutral. So I would say that's good for the volume. But damn, that's interesting. I was looking at elements of the periodic table for 5-9, and it's like, okay, well, there's boron and there's fluorine. That's the 5th and 9th atomic number. And it's like, okay, what happens if you add them together? You get silicone. And I didn't really get a ton of it. But then you mentioned xenon. I was like, okay, so that's element number 54 that has the 5 in it. But where does the 4 come from? So I was like, okay, what about 9 times 5? And then you get rhodium. It's like, okay, that's number 45 on the atomic number. I was like, okay. But I don't see any connection on the elements of the periodic table. So I'm probably just chasing like ghosts, like chasing nothing. Have you guys taken a look at like Bible verses or anything more for 5-9?
So I don't think so. I can't really tell you because we have that Project 59 team. So from what I hear in the communities, which I'm in a lot of, right? So I don't know if anybody's going down that rabbit hole. I know we spent an inordinate amount of time in the gaming industry, right, and the crypto industry, but I can find out. But I don't know if somebody is a part of our Project 59 is looking into scripture.
I think that would be fun to see. Like, hey, what else could 59 mean?
Yeah.
William Shakespeare's sonnet 59 is written in iambic pentameter, which is like, that means every 10 there's 10 syllables per line. So yeah, have you ever heard of Cicada 3301?
So you brought it up on the
oh yeah, I did.
Yeah. So and it happened over, like, I think it happened over 4 years. And by the way, that shows up in young Sheldon. So on his computer screen,
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it actually showed up. But oh, do I have it in my notes? So, and I sent it to you, but it doesn't have any relevance in 1991. That Cicada, was it 3331? It came out like 4 years later, right? So I think, or maybe I'm even wrong. Maybe I think it was early I sent you a message on it. I think it actually came out in 2000, right? Those puzzles came out like in early 2000. Yet it was still showing up on young Sheldon. But we'll have to look at it. But I know I sent you the message on it because you brought it up, and it happened to be on the same computer screen.
That's so
the
cool.
young Sheldon episode. So, and you'll see it. I sent it to you, and you can send it out to everyone who's joined here. But I sent you another YouTuber, right, that did like a 4-minute video, and he actually shows the screenshot, and it will show that cicada, right?
I got, so this one where you have all of the names. I see Hal Finney,
Yeah.
with Space Quest and all that. So I just went back to all the messages here.
So
Gaming
it's
Hollywood.
the guy has an Australian accent. So it's the one I sent you last night.
Okay.
And his name's R Crypto. I think it's R Crypto. So one I sent
Ripto,
you. Yeah. So on that one, I don't know, 2.5 minutes into it, he actually has the screenshot, and it'll show, he's got little circles around it, and that'll show Cicada 331.
Yeah, this is that's one of the ones where I would have loved to have attempted to try. I looked at some of the puzzles afterwards, and I don't think I'm smart enough for it. Oh yeah, it's Elon Musk with Space Quest in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so cool.
Oh, so that's another thing that you bring it up. So he was an intern. So Elon Musk was an intern for Rod Nakamoto, and it is actually online that Elon Musk, what you said, when he was younger, he liked King's Quest and he loved Space Quest, right? Those were both Sierra Online games. And he was, an intern for Rod Nakamoto. So, but he says, of course, he was not a part of, the Bitcoin white paper or anything like that. So just another kind of little funny coincidence.
Love those. So yeah, this is like crack to me because I love going down rabbit holes. I was telling you about, the fact that with all this technology and, it seems that it's harder to build buildings now than all of the stuff that we had that were built in a couple of years back. And then Mall World, where we all kind of dream of the same mall. Aside from this, what other conspiracies have you gone into recently?
Oh, so what other fun facts? So, I mean, really the only thing that someone else mentioned to us, and that's what kind of brought us down the time chain rabbit hole, so we're trying to do some more research on that. But the fact that it was started as the word time chain and not blockchain. And then when you look at Space Quest, 1 through, 6, it's all about time travel, right? And with a blockchain, right, every block is stamped, right? It's time stamped. So then there's somebody saying, what about the Mandela effect? And it kind of goes, what you like, hey, I remember being in this place and this time, right? There's that butterfly effect. So we're trying to figure that out as well, right? Like that this was kind of first had the name of a time chain. And here we see the Bitcoin logo in Space Quest, which is a time travel, digital video game. So really for us right now, that's some of the strings that we're pulling on. And as I said, there's a lot of things we're still doing, right, to figure out about as gaming continued and Ron Nakamoto went from company to company. He went to Namco, right? So we're pulling on those strings. We're also pulling, more into the crypto community, because the very hard thing is, there's been some email back and forth with the founders of Space Quest, right? Mark Crow and Scott Murphy. And they said, oh, the number 59, that was somebody's birthday, right? Like, so the thing is, as we try to talk to people, I've reached out to Rod Nakamoto. Other people have tried, unless we hear from the horse's mouth, right? Everything is hearsay. Everything is what we can find on ChatGPT, Grok, and we Perplexity AI. So we're using all these AI engines and just trying to find different things, and a lot of stuff that Hal Finney was working on. What we understand, that is in some vault somewhere, right? Like, so, unless we get our hands on any of that, right, to get us closer. But yeah, so we're just trying to go down whatever rabbit holes, right? And like somebody like you, if you bring something up to our community, and that's why I would implore everybody listening, come join us on our spaces. You have any kind of conspiracy, share it with us, and we'll have our Project 59 team, hunt it down, right? So that's kind of where we are. And then again, like I said, to repeat myself, we're working on what's next for us, right? So we will be going to the Bitcoin conference in Asia. I think it's going to be in Hong Kong. So we will be going there, right? And hopefully we'll have a plan in place, right, to protect the Buckazoids meme coin and get our market cap right, in a position to be very successful, and people can't keep clipping it, or doing whatever nefarious stuff they might be doing. But it's we've been holding up, right? So like I said, I think this accumulation, we're going to see us ripping. Again, no guarantee, do your own research, but I believe in it, which is why I only own 2 meme coins, and this being my biggest bag, right, for my meme coins. So
that's really cool. Have you heard of weaponized autism?
No.
So it started with this group on 4chan, and I was there for this. It was so cool. It was cool. In May of 2016, ISIS puts out like this training recruitment video, and it was like straight trash. And in the background, there's like these 3 like electricity things, or like basically like a couple people on like, so I got an email about it. I was in Kuwait, and there was like, hey, new ISIS, like whatever. I was like, okay, cool. And then I see it on like 4chan, where like obviously like the email didn't get leaked, but that video was on the internet, and they're like, hey, I think I know where this is. And I was like, what the fuck? So I go to my captain, and she's like, does he say where? I was like, well, no, this person just said like, they think they know where it is. And she's like, who is this person? Like she didn't understand 4chan. She didn't understand, like, she was a reservist. She didn't understand anything. And she's like, I can't go to like my CO and tell him like, hey, this one random person that I don't even know is real thinks that they might find something. And then, long story short, they went to somebody in like the Russian military, and like they confirmed it, like, hey, here's where it is based on these points, we think we found it. And they just bombed the heck out of it like 2 days later. So that was like their first thing. And then like a year or 2 later, do you remember Shia LaBeouf's like "He Will Not Divide Us" thing?
Yeah.
So he would post like a flag in front of like a camera that would continuously live stream, saying like, "He will not divide us." And people just kept like taking it down. And he's like, okay, so he goes into like the middle of this field in the middle of nowhere, and he puts this flag and he says like, okay, he'll like take it down now. And I think 2 days later, so one day's like, okay, when does the sun go down on this particular place? I was like, okay, so it's got to be in this large swath of area. And then based on the airplanes that go by, people are looking at flight patterns. And then based on like a tweet that he did, like, okay, he's got to be in this area. So they had somebody drive around and honking a horn, and so like within 3 days they found it, and they like took it down. And I feel like if you brought them this video, or if we post on Reddit, post on 4chan, hey, weaponized autism, I have something for you. You've done most of the legwork already. I feel like they could find it. I feel like they could 100%.
Well, and here's going back to the very beginning of what I said, the coincidence and the timing of all this. Like, how did this coin not get discovered before March 26th, right? So, and this guy, Jay Rotter, like, he's never posted anything ever again on Reddit. I can't say for certain. I don't think he even owns Buckazoids, right? Like, but like he posted it, and that's it, right? There's never been another post from that person. So everybody who's listening, right, just go to Reddit, look up Jay Rotter, RODDER, and then you'll see it, right? Just do Jay Rotter space quest 4. But so I just find that also interesting, right? March 26th of this year, and this game was out in 1991. How was this the first time anybody has ever seen it? So that to me is just crazy.
There's a couple of things that I don't think are like you said, like, why didn't this get discovered? Like, this has been out here like forever, supposedly. Right. And so there's this, at first it was very laughable, like, like birds aren't real. I don't know if you've heard that. All right. And then like some of like China, some of like these drones, like birds, like, okay, well, these things pretending to be birds aren't real. But there was a post on, it was 4chan again a few years ago, talking about pandas. And they're like, all right, what? And that they don't think that they're real, or they're sometimes they were made in a lab because like they're endangered. But how were they not discovered until like 1889 or whatever? And it's like, how are they not? It doesn't make sense. Like, you would think that in one, they don't blend in very well to the environment. They're very stupid. They don't really hunt, so it's not like they're a danger. They're pretty chill, and also they're not part of like the Chinese zodiac. Like, you have so many. Like, they have a dragon.
That's true.
Zodiac, but they don't have a panda, and that's like their whole thing. So I feel like sometimes I don't know. It sounds very crazy, but maybe time is manipulated, and it's like the Mandela effect theory.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Oh, and the one thing I forgot, so there's so much. So sometimes when I talk and I listen, so that number 59. So again, this is documented, right? Do your own research, Grok, ChatGPT, Perplexity AI. But it took 59 weeks for them to come up with the Bitcoin logo, right? So like, if you just like, how long did it take to come up with the Bitcoin logo? 59 weeks. So again, there are some people that have been fudding us, right? So let's be honest out there. There are people like, oh, 59. It's just because that's what you start with the game, right? Well, yeah, it's true, but why 59, right? Again, the coincidence, like, you could have picked 100, you could have picked 50, they picked 59, and then we went over what 9 plus 5 is 14, mining difficulty every 14 days, right? So 9 minus 5, right? 4, that's every halving cycle happens every 4 years. So that's another thing. It took 59 weeks for them to come up with the Bitcoin logo, right? And 9 and 5 is 14, and the Bitcoin logo is tilted 14 degrees. So just in case people who came later. So do we believe there's significance to 59? Yes. Are these all coincidences? I say no, right? Like, somebody who had the forethought, right? And that's why we say we believe Buckazoids is the birth of Bitcoin, right? I mean, just when you start to look at all these, pieces of evidence, right? But until we have somebody who can speak to it, right, that was a part of it, because they're still alive, right? Scott Murphy and Mark Crow, but, I don't think we're going to get the truth. So,
yeah. And even if they, like, I feel like some people take secrets to their grave, maybe Al Finney, and we may never know.
Yeah. And his wife also. His wife, like they both, his wife is still alive, lovely lady, because she's been on some interviews that I've seen. But yeah, they say they've had nothing to do with it. So, but, and I don't know, can people, like, are there any questions that, like, with StreamYard, can people, send you any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, VeVe Zombie. Well, there are no questions. VeVe Zombie says, "Yo, good morning." Zombie says, "There are no coincidences." Correct. And then look at mud flood. So I just did a quick Google of that, and it's, I guess, the theory where a lot of these buildings, they actually have a lot of lower levels to them, but floods happen with mud, and a lot of them are buried. Okay. And that is interesting as well.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, so that's it. I would just say, everybody, if you're interested, follow us on X. There's usually spaces going on almost around the clock, because, as it's global. So we have a lot of people, in Asia. We have a lot of people in Latin, South America, in Europe. I mean, so we kind of have spaces going 24/7. And it's a mix. Sometimes, we're bull posting as a team. Hey, let's say this and let's post it. Or, hey, let's talk about what's next, right? Or we'll play a little bit of music, right? But there's always dialogue happening. So I would say, join our spaces. If you have anything to add, we'd love to hear from you, because you may know something that we have not even begun to, you know, go down the rabbit hole.
There's somebody named War on Will says Buckazoids is going straight to Xenon.
Yeah. Yeah, again, unless somebody could tell me otherwise, I just don't know of another meme coin that has this kind of a narrative, you know?
Yeah, there's many coincidences. I love stuff with mystery. Like it's fun. It makes it.
Yeah.
What else are we going to discover?
And I can tell this to everybody here, like the guys at, you know, so the Bitcoin conference, so the people right behind it, putting on the Bitcoin conference and the Bitcoin magazine, like they love the narrative as well. Like they absolutely love the narrative. So, and I just think, yeah, there's going to, like this conference, the more to come. This conference was very successful for us. So I think, and everybody that came up to us already knew about us, right? So, and what I've said to our community, if you think about it, right? Yeah, well, they're in crypto, so they know, right? So I think when we start to even kind of get a little bit outside our echo chamber, right? Get a little bit outside of crypto and, you know, maybe into just other financial, you know, YouTubers that just talk about finance and stuff. I think that will also help the narrative, right? You know, because there are other people outside of crypto that also are into, you know, conspiracies and things like that. So we're also working on that. How do we broaden our appeal so that it goes viral? Because then if it goes viral, right, you know, we go outside the crypto community, it's only going to strengthen us.
Yeah. So there's multiple, I guess there's two fronts, because I didn't know about this until I was in the space, and I was like, what? Like, because I tend to stay pretty much in my own lane, and I know a couple of projects pretty intimately, but there's so much out there.
Yes.
So I think you have that, and then me and Zombie and our friend Bill, we love conspiracies. Like I'll have conspiracy only shows on, and it gets to be a lot of fun. So I think when you have that, have you guys tried like talking about this like on TikTok, like a long form video? It's like 9 minutes.
So we're just getting into TikTok. As a matter of fact, I think late last in the middle of the night, one of our, you know, European, you know, colleagues, just actually, there's a link, right? And I can get it to you, but yeah, we're just starting out on TikTok, right? And they're like 3 and 4 minute long little clips, but yeah, but we're looking into that. And again, because it's all community driven, right? So, you know, it's the talents in our community, right? So who's got that talent to build TikTok videos for us? So yeah, so we're just starting that as we speak.
That's one of, especially like at night. I don't know, like TikTok knows like what time it is, and it knows where you are, because I don't get any like scary or conspiracy stories during the day. It's like all after like
Really?
1 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll send you the link. So, and it's got a lot of what's already on Spaces, right? That we've kind of morphed it into TikTok, but we're going to be more dedicated to just producing content. And the same goes for YouTube, right? You know, so some of the stuff makes its way to YouTube, but again, all things that we're working on. We were so head down and focused on the Bitcoin conference that just consumed all our time, right?
Yeah.
But now what's next?
Well, the world, man. Yeah. What's next? We'll see. Sharp. All dialed up. You got anything before we bounce?
I'm the mind blown emoji. You know,
Yeah, I didn't know, because this is a lot at once. A lot.
Yes, I'm just processing, but thank you for sharing. Very interesting.
No, absolutely.
It's the thing. I think that's the most important, like, you know, in my mind, getting outside that echo chamber. You know, you're in a closed loop until you can expand out. And I think that that's why we have this show, because if not, sometimes I find in Spaces you're just talking to your own community there, right? And your own community is there because your community, they have conviction for your project. And then it's like, who else are we reaching? And we have to get outside that closed loop, and bring it to other people. So yes, with the TikTok, and just expanding outside our system we get in, because like Randy just said, there's so many projects out there, and you tend to find those few you get intimate with that you connect with, and there's probably other people that would really connect with this project. So
yeah,
awesome.
I agree. And that's why I implore people to go, you know, follow us on X, join our Spaces, because the time chain, that wasn't from anybody with inside our community. A new person, right, that joined one of the Spaces said, you know, it wasn't always called the blockchain, right? When they were working on the white paper, you know, like there is information that they called it the time chain, right? So, and they were like, and why, right? You know, Space Quest 4 is about time travel and the timestamp of, you know, when you're doing the blocks in a blockchain. So yeah, so it's very, very interesting, right? So that's why I would love as many people to join us. And if you have any conspiracy theory, share it with us and we'll go down the rabbit hole and we'll work on it for you. So
Let's get the spread. Yeah, I like the Bible verses, or passages, the elements periodic table. Those are kind of like my go-tos. Then Shakespeare stuff. But anyway, thank you so much for coming. This is great. We'll have you on again. We'll try to get you on a conspiracy only show because I love those. And everyone, say